Hello, we're here today with Kazuma, who recently came 26th in the Oceania Online Regional, and he just came first in tonight's hobby. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I did pretty well in the online tournament, and I went 4-0 today as well, so it's good to see that my Nami list is paying off.
What was the reason that you played Nami?
So I've been playing Nami since set 3, so I feel pretty confident with this leader, and I love the unique playstyle, the unique win condition, and because it's an off-meta leader, it really abuses your opponent not knowing how to play against the leader.
I know you've got a pretty spicy deck list today, so let's just get into it.
Alright, firstly we have 4 copies of Caius. So this card really needs no explanation. It's the most important card in your deck, arguably. It's a 2-gig counter. You want to see as many copies of it during the games. And then the draw 2, trash 2. I feel like the trash 2 part is actually a benefit in this meta because of pudding. You don't want to have too many cards in your hand. And then we have 4 copies of Mr. Ones. So Mr. One, usually your target that you want to get from trash is your Gavels. But other than that, your Rubber Band and your Desert Spider is not too bad as well. And at worst, it's a 1-gig counter, so it's not too bad. And then next, we're running 3 copies of Zeph. Ideally, I want 4 copies, but I struggle to find slots for it for my text that I'll be going over after this. But Zeph in this meta, I think against decks like Moria and Sakazuki, I don't really expect it to be alive. I expect it to get removed straight away, but it's really just for the on-play effect that I play this card. I'm able to mill 2 cards from my deck, and I'm able to bounce my Caius to my hand, so that's very important. And then against Katakuri, Zeph is very nice right now because Katakuri have dropped Thunderbolt. They don't run Equals Kid mini lists, and they only run about maybe 2 or 3 copies of Reject. If they're running the Big Mom package, they can't search it, and it's also a 4-on commitment. So I think the Zeph applies a lot of pressure in the yellow matchup. And then next is the Spice that I have. 3 copies of Crocodile. So this card has Banish and Dawn ×1. Give blue events in your hand -1 cost. So this is during your turn and both the opponent's turn. So your 1-cost events cost 0 and your 2-cost events cost 1. If you have 2 crocodiles on board, your 2-cost events cost 0 and then your plus cost 1. If you have 3, that's pretty insane, but that really never happens. And then, yeah, it's also a nice body, 7k, or it will be 8k if you put a dot on it each time. To just swing into their bodies. I really only play this card against matchups that don't have easy removals like Katakuri and Yamato.
What's the reason behind just playing 3 of them? Do you feel like because you draw so much, you're just gonna see it?
Yeah, so I tried 3 copies and I think this is the perfect ratio. I usually see 1 or 2 in the matchups I need it most, but yeah, I always play it on curve, and then you can also do something funny with the Banish effect, especially against Yamato. There was a video that kind of blew up on Twitter of me swinging Banish Crocodile twice and then swinging lethal with Nami, so that was kind of funny.
That's pretty insane.
But yeah, moving on to the 1-cost events. So we have Desert Spider. So Desert Spider, it's very nice to be able to rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck. You're able to map out your next turn and draw into the cards you need. If you send cards to the bottom, that's also a benefit for you because you're sending cards that you don't need, and you also know what's at the bottom of your deck, so you can play around it when you're getting down to the last few cards. And then obviously the trigger effect, draw 2 cards, trash 1, that helps you mill and then get rid of cards that you don't need from your hand. And then we have 4 copies of Rubber Band of Doom. So again, this is plus 2000 counter, and then you're able to mill 1 card from your deck. So that helps you thin your deck out. And then the trigger effect, draw 1, trash 1 again. That just helps you thin out your deck so you're closer for your win. And then we have 4 Gum Gum Giant Gavels. So it gives your leader plus 4000. And then this card is very good because it gives you big counters and you're able to mill 2 cards from your deck, which is quite huge. The trigger effect, return a cost 4 or less to the owner's hand. You can use it on the opponent, or in some situations I'll return my Caius to my hand if I want to cycle through my deck better. And then we have 4 copies of Impact Down All-Stars. So this card you obviously don't play from your hand. It's just in there for the draw 2 cards, the trigger effect. Next we're moving to the 2-cost events. We have 4 copies of Breakfast. So Breakfast I usually use to bounce my Caius to my hand. it's also quite nice to be able to bounce their 4-cost characters. If the opponent, if you want to just ease the board a little, you can bounce the opponent's characters to the hand. And then again, the trigger effects, I can bounce my Kai to my hand, or sometimes the opponent's characters, which can throw them off and remove some attackers from the board. And then we have 4 copies of Whitesnake. So this was the biggest addition, obviously, in set 6. It gives my leader plus 1000 for the turn, and I draw a card. So it lets you maintain your hand size while having a permanent 1k for that turn. So just this one card just made it a completely different deck, to be honest, because the rule of thumb against Nami used to be swing 5ks wide with your bodies. But all of a sudden, if I play a Whitesnake, if they're playing the cards on curve or they're using up all the dons, then they won't have any dons to put on the characters to swing 6k or above. So it makes it really difficult for the opponent and how they swing. And even if they do swing 6ks, if I have other 1-cost events like Rubber Band and Desert Spider, I can just use them instead. It's just perfect counter, perfect value right there. And then we have 4 copies of Love Mellow. It doesn't have a trigger, unfortunately, but the counter effect is just way too good. Plus 4000, that's a huge counter. And then if I have 3 cards or less, I draw 1. This has clutched me a ton of games, being able to draw into more counters or thinning out my deck. And then another 2-cost counter, I don't really see people running, Overheat. So it gives my leader plus 4000, then I return an active 3-cost or lower. So this can be your opponent's or your own character. Usually I like using it on my own Kaias. Mr. 1's also not too bad as well. But 3-cost or lower, you might be able to bounce the opponent's Perosperos. If you're against Sakazuki, I'm usually okay with bouncing the Hinas or, even the Tashigis or brand news, because they become 5k, 6k attackers with Houndblaze. So yeah, and the trigger effect, bounce a 4 or less. So again, that's same effect as Breakfast. I use it to bounce my own character or the opponent's characters. And then we finish off with Pillar. If you have this in your starting hand, play it as soon as possible. Draw 2 cards, and then the main effect, I get to draw 2 cards. If I see these in my triggers, I'm super happy. And then I'm also going to go over cards that I get a lot of questions about, why I don't run them. So Buggy, so I can search a top 5 and get an input down card. I've actually dropped this card since set 4, I believe. I've just never been a fan of it because you end up sending your Kaias and your Pilifs and your Zeths to the bottom of your deck. So if you have a really bricked up hand, it doesn't really help with cycling through your deck. If you search a Breakfast, maybe it'll help, but you actually whiff search with him quite a lot, surprisingly. And the big reason, I feel like, is if you play Buggy, you're having to remember heaps of cards that go to the bottom of your deck. It can be mentally draining, and it can be quite difficult to do if you're playing heaps and heaps of games. So yeah, I've removed Buggy. And then even the lists I do see running Buggy, they only run like 2 or 3 copies. And most of the time you don't even see it, or you use it as a wonky counter, so I feel like it's not a really necessary card. And then Deathwing, a lot of people are shocked that I don't run this card, but to be honest, I don't run Buggy because I feel like the main reason people run it is because they want to increase the search targets for Buggy so they don't whiff. But Deathwing just sits in your hand for like your early and mid game. It doesn't really do much and you end up trashing it from your hand. The trigger effect does come in clutch sometimes, but it just sits in my hand. I don't really use the effect, and it's very situational because some games you don't even use Deathwing and you still win, so yeah, that's my list.
Cool. So you obviously went viral for winning Nami by swinging face.
Yeah.
What's sort of the ratio, your win ratio for like decking out versus like swinging at your opponent?
I've actually pulled it off on the sim twice against Yamato. I've never pulled it off in real life, and then it was just funny because the opponent counted out of the early swings when I had 2 crocodiles on board, and then that was my first time that happened in real life, so I was super happy.
Yeah. Do you remember your matchups?
So first game I versed Reiju, I think. Reiju I find quite favored for me, especially with the overheats, being able to bounce my Kai to my hand, so I don't have too many cards in hand for the pudding in case they do run it. But yeah, and then I also versed Moria. He played 2 puddings against me, but I just had like 3 triggers, so I won that quite easily.
Did you mean Peronas?
Yeah, Peronas, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. And then the Whitesnake also helps in that matchup because the 4-cost characters are 5k body, and then you make them question themselves if they want to swing 6k and over, or they want to just drop big bodies.
Right.
Especially on the 8-cost Moria turn. I also versed 2 Katakuris. I won one matchup. I just saw a crocodile, heaps of Pilif's Kayas, but the other one I lost because I did have a Pilif in my starting hand, but I drew into bricks. The opponent played very well. He rearranged my life so I couldn't get triggers and the cards I need. And I lost with 2 cards left. Yeah, and then Sakazuki, I also beat one Sakazuki and then lost to the other one because he saw 4 Hound Blazes, so that wasn't nice. What else? And then obviously the 2 Yamatos. Both games I played 2 Crocodiles back to back. So yeah, it was funny because I survived for like 2 or 3 turns on 0 life, and then obviously the one clip that went viral.
Yeah.
That was a very non-standard way of winning with Nami.
What's your ideal starting hand? What are you mulling for?
Yeah, so if I see a Kai or a Pilif, that's an instant keep regardless of the other cards in hand, because even if you have bricks and the rest of your hand, you can just trash them with Gum Gum Gavel or Kaya, so I'm not too worried about it.
Any last words?
Yeah, it's just really stoked to have so much support on Twitter.
Yeah.
I didn't expect my tweets and my deck list to blow up. I have a few collabs coming up with a bunch of YouTubers that I'll probably be going over in depth about my deck list and playstyles and everything.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put your Twitter in the description of this video.
That's Nikaido TCG.
Yeah.
Please follow.
Thank you so much. Congratulations again for a great achievement, especially for such a spicy deck list.
Thank you.
Cool.